Welcome to You're Doing It Wrong with Coach PJ. Today we're going to go through the half kneeling hip flexor stretch. This is a great stretch. If performed correctly, it can be a great way to open up your hip flexors, a great warm-up exercise, but most people perform it incorrectly and they don't pay any attention to the right way to get this stretch done. So this is the way most people perform this stretch. Christina's set up from the side here, turn sideways. And what she's going to do is reach her arms overhead. She's going to jam way forward, paying no attention to her hip position, and she's arching her back. And this is how they normally do it. And she'll probably be getting, at this point, she's probably getting a little bit of stretch in that hip flexor. But in order to get a little stretch in that hip flexor, she's actually rotating her hips forward. So she's putting herself in a really bad position here, and it's a lot easier to put tension on those hip flexors just by correcting her pelvis position. So instead of that, what I'm going to have Christina do is set up with her knee right underneath her body. So I want to see a nice straight line from her knee to her hip, to her shoulder, to her ear. Everything's in a nice straight line. From here, her other foot's straight out in front. She's got her tailbone tucked slightly underneath her, so it's going to keep her hips in a nice neutral position. So show anterior tilted position. So here was the position before with her hips tilted forward. Now she's going to tuck them back underneath her, and she's actually going to squeeze this glute on this side to help lock that hip down. Now she can reach up with this same side hand if she wants. This will actually increase the stretch from the fascia all the way attached at the hand here, all the way down through the body. But in this position, she can just slightly lean her whole body forward. But this whole thing should move as one unit. So her ear, shoulder, hip, knee should all be in that same line as she leans forward. Now she's going to get a huge stretch through that hip flexor, but she's getting it in the right position because she's put her pelvis in the right position. If she gets into that anterior tilted position, she's shortening her hip flexors, and that's why she had to go so far forward in order to get a stretch. But as she tucks them back, she puts her hips into the right position, and now her hip flexors are going to get a nice stretch position. One other thing we could do here is if we had something in front of Christina, she could be pushing down to help bring her rib cage down into a good position, turn the abdominals on, and again, that's just going to help her lock her torso in position so she has a good position as she gets into this stretch. So that is one of the most common mistakes in a half kneeling hip flexor stretch, and that's how you can correct it to have a much more effective hip flexor stretch.